Fine. So now we'll discuss the static and the non-static concept. What is the static and non-static, and how do you declare the static and the non-static variables or functions in your class? Fine. So like I have this Visual Studio project with me, the first date project, in which we discuss like we have a friend class whose two properties are defined, the name of the friend and the phone number of that particular friend. Right. Now say suppose I have one more property of the friend class, that is the city in which that particular friend lives in. Okay, so I declare one more variable city in the friend class. Right. Now in my main function in the program.cs class file, okay, I just uncomment this function and I'll have to comment the main function of the Selenium basics class. Okay, right. Now I have declared one more variable in my friend class, that is the city variable. Now say suppose I say that the first friend lives in the city, say Bangalore. Okay, and I know that my second friend also lives in the same city, that is Bangalore. Okay, second friend also lives in the same city. Rather, all my friends are from Bangalore only. Okay, right. So now what will happen? Now in the memory, what we have is, we have right now two objects with us. Okay, in which we have the two properties, like the three properties, that is the name and the phone number of that particular friend, the two friends. And similarly we have declared one more variable, that is the city variable, whose value is equal to Bangalore. Right. Rather, in both the objects of the friend class, the city is equated to Bangalore, that is both the friends lives in the same city. Right. So city will also be occupied in the memory in both the two objects. Okay, and then this is your first object. The first object, F1 is pointing towards the first object, right? And F2 is pointing towards the second object. Fine. Now I have equated my city variable to Bangalore for both the friends. Now what will happen? This, as you can see, this is a little redundant thing. Okay, I know that even like each friend lives in the same city, Bangalore. Then why do I keep it inside every object? Right. Say like out here we have only two objects, but tomorrow we might have 50 objects or 100 objects. Then if all our friends are from the same city, then I'll be equating the city variable to Bangalore for all my objects. So what I will do is, now we will not do it like this. Why to keep the city variable in all the objects if its value is same for all the objects? Right. So what we will do is, we will remove this city variable from every object. Okay, we will move this city variable from each and every object, and will make this city variable as static. So what static will do is, it will move the city variable from each and every object, and it will keep that city variable at a common location outside these objects in the class. Alright, so now the city variable will not be a part of the object. Rather it would be part of the class. Okay, and then you cannot access this city variable with the help of the objects. Like we were accessing it with the help of the objects. Now when we declare the city variable as static, you cannot access the static variables with the help of an object. We will now have to access the city variable with the class, since now city variable is a part of the class. It is not the part of the objects. We have moved the city variable from each and every object and have kept it at a common location, that is there inside the class. Okay, so now the city variable doesn't remain in the object, it becomes the property of the class, the city variable. Okay, so what do I mean by that? That is, if I declare the city variable as static, public static string city variable. So now when you go to your main function, you see that the errors have started coming up below this city variable, and the error says, if you hover your mouse over this city variable, over this error, the error says that the member city cannot be accessed with an instance reference. Qualify it with a type name instead. That is, now we don't have to access the city variables with the help of an object. F1 is the object reference which is pointing towards the first friend, right? So now we'll not be accessing the city variable with the help of an object, rather we have to access it with the class. Fine. So now we can say that all my friends are from the same city. So you just have to access that city variable with the help of the class. Okay, and then one more thing. Since like our two objects, name and the phone number, are non-static, they are not static, right? So non-static things have to be accessed with the help of an object, but the static things have to be accessed with the help of a class. Okay, say like if I try to access the name and the phone number with the help of the class, then we cannot do so. You see that the error is coming for this below this name variable. That is the same error. The error says that the object reference is required for the non-static field, method or property name. An object reference is required for the non-static field, right? These are non-static fields. So for the non-static fields, object reference is required. That is this F1 or F2, the object. We cannot access the non-static things with the help of the class, but the static things have to be accessed with the help of a class, since static things are part of the class, not the objects. Okay, right. Now similarly, we can declare the static functions as well in a particular class. Say suppose in my friend class I have one function, that is, say, public static void print city. Print city is a function which what will it do? It will simply print the city. Okay, so now if you have to access this print city function in your main function, you will simply access it with the name of the class, that is friend.print city. Fine. So now if I execute, it prints the city of that friend, that is Bangalore. Alright, so this is how you call the static things, the static variables or the static functions, the static variables or the static functions in your particular class. That is, static functions or the variables have to be accessed with the help of the class. They cannot be accessed with the object. Okay, now okay, so like in our classes, in our projects, in our like Selenium also, we'll be making use of both static and non-static, but much will be making use of the non-static things. But this is what you can say is the static. So static, you can say that the common thing, the thing which is common, you can keep that variable as static. Since this city variable was common for all my friends, so I kept this city variable as static in my class. Right, so static means that the common, anything which is common for a particular area, that thing you can keep it as static. Okay, now the next question, the question that arises is like coming to our Selenium concept now. The question which arises is, everything has a driver. Firefox driver, Chrome driver, IE driver, Opera, Safari, everything has a driver. So will you be learning these driver classes separately? If I have, say suppose if I have to work on the Firefox browser, then will my commands and approach be different than if I have to work on the Chrome browser or the IE browser or the Opera browser? Will I have to create these objects separately in my class? What if a single script runs on the multiple browsers? right? So how will you do that? So this question is addressed, in the next concept, that is the interfaces. That comes under the concept of interfaces, right? For example, say like if I go to a bookstore, then we see the front cover and the back cover of the book, and then we judge that what that book offers to us, right? Or if you go to a restaurant, you just see the menu card, and then you don't know ultimately how it's going to be, how the food is going to taste, but you just look that menu at that menu, and then you just order the things that you want, right? So that menu is like an interface which tells you what that particular menu is offering to you. So menu is like an interface. Similarly, interface, interface, it describes what your project will do, what all commands and features will be there in your project. Okay, for example, say if I go to the official website, seleniumhq.org website, I go to my documentation for C#. I'll just open my API docs. Okay, so if you look at this documentation as well, you can see various interfaces in this documentation. We have various interfaces in this documentation, right? So suppose if I go to any interface, say mouse interface. Okay, so mouse interface, it provides the methods representing the basic mouse actions. The basic mouse actions this interface provides to us. Say for example, the click function or the context click, double click, mouse up, mouse down. So these are the various functions that this mouse interface provides to us, right? So that is, now what this says, it describes what the mouse functionalities looks like, right? Whether it has to click or it has to context click or double click. So these are all the properties, these are all the functionalities which mouse interface provides to us. Now how they will be implemented, we don't know. We'll be making use of these functions. We'll be simply calling these functions, right? We don't know how, what code is written behind this click function, in this click function. We ultimately don't know anything. We will just make use of these functions and all in order to work with our code. Okay, so interface helps you know what the system does for you. For example, the keyboard provides you an interface with the buttons. You press buttons, you press any button and something happens on the screen. How it happens internally, we don't know, right? So similarly, there are interfaces in C# as well. We can declare the interfaces in C# also, right? For example, say I create a new class, or I'll add a new project. Second day. Okay, so this is our project. Now inside this project, what I'll do is, say I'll add an interface now, right? So I right click on my project, add new item, and then we'll be adding an interface now. Okay, say I add an interface known as the phone interface. I have an interface, phone interface with me. Okay, now interface has function declaration only, no implementation inside the interface. That is, what do I mean by that? I just said that interface has function declaration only. That is, now what a phone offers to you, say a phone has the functionality of calling, right? So I say call. I'll just declare the function. I said interface has function declaration, so I'll just declare the functions. I'll not implement the functions. We cannot implement the functions inside an interface. So if you try to implement this call function, okay, and then if you compile your code, you get an error. It says that the interface members cannot have a definition. Inside the interface, the members cannot have the function members cannot have the definition of that particular member. Okay, so interface, inside an interface we can only declare the functions, no implementation is there. Similarly, say like one more property we have of the of the phone class, that is the text of the we can text in the phone. Okay, so these are the two properties which any phone will offer to us. Okay, so first point of the interface is in an interface we have only the function declaration, no implementation is there, right? Then the second point is there is no console.write line inside an interface, right? Where we will where we'll print anything. Since we cannot implement these interfaces, if I try to print anything over here inside an interface, then if I compile my code, I get the error. Interface members cannot have a definition. Since then the second point also comes in, that we cannot print anything. There is no console.write line inside an interface. Okay, we can only declare the functions in an interface. And then the third point is there is no public access specifier with the interfaces. These functions are public by default. They are public by default. You need not to declare public to your functions inside an interface, right? So you see that the modifier public is not valid for this item. We need not to declare public with any function or with an interface as well, since these are public by default only. Okay, these are public by default only. Fine. So the third point says we cannot specify the public access specifier with the functions inside an interface. Okay, and then the next point which comes with the interface is there are you cannot declare the fields inside an interface as you can do with the class, as you can declare your variables inside the class, right? Say suppose if I try to if I am declaring an integer variable x inside an interface, right? If I build my solution, you see that it says interface cannot contain the fields. We cannot declare the fields inside an interface as we can do inside the class. In the class, we are declaring the fields, we are declaring the variables, right? But in an interface, we cannot do so. So these are some properties of the interface, right, that we have discussed. The first point was there is no function implementation inside an interface, only the function declaration is there, right? And then the next point was you cannot these functions are public by default only. We don't declare them as public, otherwise we will get an error in the interface. And then interface cannot contain the fields inside them as we have in the class. Okay, so these are some of the properties of an interface. Okay, now say suppose this is an interface, a phone interface with two properties, call and the text, right? Now say suppose I have one class, I'll declare one class, say Nexus. I have one class, Nexus class with me. Okay, now we know that Nexus is a phone, right? Nexus is a phone. So Nexus will also be having the functionality of calling and texting inside it, right? So what I will do is if we don't declare, then what we will do is we will have to implement this interface. If you don't implement this interface, then what you will do is you will simply be simply declaring the both functions, the call and the text functions again in your class, in your Nexus class as well, right? The two functions, text and the call functions, we will be implementing the two functions again in my Nexus class. So right now we have only two functions, but tomorrow we might have 20 functions or 30 functions, right? So we'll be declaring all those functions the same functions that we have declared in an interface, the same functions will be declaring in the respective class as well. So why to keep the redundant? This is the redundancy, right? The declaring the same functions again, implementing the same functions again in all the classes, right? So what we will do, since we know that Nexus is a phone, right? So what we will do is, we have declared the two functions. We have declared the functions inside an interface. So in the Nexus class, we will implement that phone interface. So how do you implement? You put a colon and then you specify the name of that interface, that is the phone interface, right? So now will not be like writing these functions from our end, right? We'll be simply implementing that phone interface which contains the functions that this Nexus class also offers to you. Okay, fine. Now, and then the next thing is the class which is implementing the interface. That class must provide the implementation of those functions that you have in that interface. Otherwise, you will get the compile time error. Okay, say like if I compile it, you see that the error says that Nexus does not implement the interface member call and Nexus does not implement the interface member text. Since like in our phone interface, I have two members, the call and the text members, and then as I told you just now that the class which is implementing the interface has to implement all the functions that you have in that interface, right? That is, what do I mean by that? We have two functions in our interface, that is the phone interface, and then in the interface we have only declared those functions, right? We have only declared, we have not implemented that. So in the implementing class, we have to implement all those functions, right? And similarly, we'll have to implement the next function as well, that is the text function. I give anything over here, fine, call someone and the text someone. Fine, so this is what you need to do. So now if I compile my solution again, now the build is succeeded. We are not getting any error since we have implemented the two functions that we have in the phone interface. Fine, now and then one more thing, say like you have this call function with you and the text function with you. Okay, and then in the class this has to be public, okay, the functions has to be public. And then we can even declare the fields as well in the class, and then in the class we are defining these functions also. So these are properties, the properties which are not there in the interface, all these properties are there in the class. Okay, so we can see the example over here. And then say like in my phone, in my interface, I have declared the two, call and the text function, and then in my implementing class, say suppose when I am implementing this call function, say like I pass any variable inside my call function. Okay, I pass any parameter inside this function. Now if I compile my solution, now we get the error. The error says that the Nexus does not implement the interface member call. That is, since like in the interface we have a parameterless call function declared, but when I am implementing that same function, call function, in my class, there is a parameter in that call function. So the compiler does not recognize which call function. Like it says, it knows that the call is a parameterless function which the class has to implement, but in the implementing class we are providing the parameter. So there it gives you an error. Okay, so you will have to be very careful how you implement those functions, whether it is a parameter or a parameterless function. You have to be very careful, otherwise you will get an error. Fine. So this is how you declare the functions. You implement any interface in the class. Fine. Now, okay. Now say suppose I have one more class with me. Say it is the iPhone class. I have one more class, iPhone class. Now iPhone is also a phone, right? So iPhone, we all know that iPhone is also having the functionality of calling and texting. Okay, so why to declare, why to initialize these two functions again in my iPhone class, right? So what I'll do is I'll simply implement the phone interface in my iPhone class as well. Okay, that is I have to declare the two functions. I now have to declare the two functions, call and the text functions, right? So how you implement, you can either like manually type the two functions, call and the text functions, or any functions, any number of functions you have, or else what you can do is if you hover your mouse to this phone interface, we get a down arrow, right? You simply click on this arrow and then it says that implement the interface phone. So if I implement this, it will automatically implement all the functions that you will be having in that interface, right? And then you can modify your function accordingly of your requirements. Fine. So like we have the two functions, call and the text functions, and then I give anything, and that is, say, iPhone calling and text. Fine. So I have it like this. Okay. Now say suppose, now over here what we have is, we have an interface with us, that is the phone interface, right? Which contains the two functions, the call and the text function inside it. And then what we have is, we have two classes with us. What these classes are, we have two classes, Nexus and the iPhone class with us. And then what we have is, like in the two classes as well, we have the two functions, the call and the text function. Since these two classes are implementing the phone interface, these two classes are implementing the phone interface. So both these two functions that you have in the phone interface, all these two functions are there in the two classes as well, which is implementing that interface. Okay, right. Now the question which arises is, we can simply remove this phone interface and we can simply create the Nexus and the iPhone class, and we can put the two functions in both the classes. What is the need of this interface? Why we have declared the phone interface separately? What is the need? Why do we do it? The reason is that, say suppose if tomorrow a new class comes in, say suppose Samsung class comes in tomorrow. Now we know that Samsung is also a phone, so Samsung also has the functionality of calling and texting inside it, right? It also has the same functionality of calling and texting. Now what happens is, now what will happen is, now a layman, if he comes in, he will easily understand that these two classes are present for sure. The call and the two functions are present for sure in the Samsung class as well, if this Samsung class is implementing the phone interface. If it is implementing the phone interface. Alright, probably the implementation will be different. The way the Nexus calls, or the way the iPhone calls, or the way the Samsung calls, the way they call, they might be different. But the function name will be same in all the implementing classes. It will be same in all the implementing classes. Alright, okay, so this is what is the importance of an interface. Similarly goes with the Selenium as well. If I show you the documentation out here, in the documentation we have an interface, WebDriver interface. Okay, WebDriver is an interface through which the user controls the browser. Like in the Selenium, like as I told you, Selenium is a web automation tool, right? So Selenium is used for the automation of the browser, web-based applications, right? So then WebDriver is an interface which controls the browser, and then all your driver classes, the Firefox driver, the Chrome driver, IE driver, all your driver classes are implementing this WebDriver interface. Okay, right. So all my driver classes are implementing the WebDriver interface. Say suppose I'll just show you. We'll just see that. Say like I have this program.cs which contains the main method, right? And then I'll have to include the Selenium DLLs as well. I'll just include that. Okay, done. Okay, I just included the Selenium DLLs. Fine. Now I told you that WebDriver is an interface, right? So when you try to open the Firefox driver, what you say is you simply create the object of the Firefox driver class is equal to new Firefox driver. Okay, and then with this object of the Firefox driver class, we can fire many functions which comes with this particular Firefox driver class. Similarly, if I want to work with the Chrome driver, then I'll have to create the object of the Chrome driver class. Okay, and then inside the Chrome driver class you'll have to give the path of the exe file inside the constructor of the Chrome driver, and with this object of the Chrome driver also we can fire any function that we want according to our requirement. Okay, so as you can see that in the Firefox driver class also we have the function URL function, and then the same URL function is present in the Chrome driver class as well. Same URL function is present in both the classes, the Firefox driver and the Chrome driver. Rather, in all the driver classes, you will find this URL function. Now, why it is so? It is because both these classes are implementing the WebDriver interface. Okay, because of which you are able to access the same URL function with both these classes. So everything is inbuilt, the APIs are inbuilt. We just need to understand what a particular class, an interface, anything that offers to you, and then accordingly you can make use of that in your program. Alright, okay, so you see that inside this WebDriver interface we have this URL function which can be used in any class, in any driver class, Firefox, whether it is Firefox or whether it is Chrome or IE, anything. Okay, so this URL function is actually present in the WebDriver interface, and since these classes are implementing the interface WebDriver, because of which you are able to access the same URL function in all the driver classes. Okay, right. So coming to the usage of the interface, like we were discussing why we need the interface. Okay, now the first usage was, like as I told you, the functions are same in all the implementing classes, right? Like you just declare the functions in an interface, and then those functions, the functions that you declare in an interface, those functions will be same in all the implementing classes. Okay, the first usage is this, and then second usage is, say suppose we'll discuss it with the help of an example. We'll just discuss with the help of an example. Now say suppose if I go to the gmail.com website. Okay, I'll just log out from this account. Okay, so you have this Gmail website, right? Now what you have to do is you have to go to this gmail.com. You just go there, and what you need to do, you need to enter your username and click on the next button, and then enter your password and sign in into your account, right? And then you have to run this script in all the three browsers, Firefox, Chrome and the IE browser. You want to run this script. So how will you do that? The same script, that is, have to go, first of all have to go to this Gmail website, then enter the username and the password, and then log in into your account. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. Fine, say suppose I'll just create a new class, that is the Gmail class I have. Okay, right. Now in my Gmail class, what I do is, say suppose I declare a variable known as the browser variable, and I initialize it with Mozilla. Any browser information you can give. If you want to run your script in the Chrome, then you can give this variable the value as Chrome or IE, any browser that you want to do. So right now I am hard coding the browser information in my code only, but like in the coming classes we'll see how we can read these parameters, this browser information from the external file, that is how can you read this information from Excel file as well. Okay, so right now we will be discussing, like I am hard coding this browser information in my code. So like I have initialized the browser variable whose value is equated to Mozilla, that is I am opening the Firefox browser. Okay, right. Now and then what you say is, say like I have a function public void okay, so I have a function now, and then what you have to do is I declare this. Okay, and then what I have to do is I am saying that, now I say that if this browser, if it equals the Mozilla, if its value is equal to Mozilla, then what you have to do is you will have to open the Firefox driver, right? You will have to open the Firefox driver. So I say that I create the object of my Firefox driver class, and I'll be opening the Firefox browser and working with that Firefox browser, right? Else what happens is, else you say that, else if the browser, if it equals Chrome, if the browser information is equal to Chrome, right, then what should happen is, then you should open the Chrome driver, right? So I'll simply include the class for it, control plus stop, and openqa.selenium.chrome is equal to new Chrome driver. Okay, and then we'll have to give the path, exe file path as well, that also we'll just give. Okay, else if the browser, or else what can happen is, else if the browser is equal to IE, then what should happen, then it should open the Internet Explorer driver class. Okay, so I similarly create the object of my Internet Explorer driver class. Alright, so you are simply checking according to the browser information. If the browser is a Firefox, then we should open the Firefox browser. Else if it equals Chrome, then we should open the Chrome browser. Else, or it should open the IE browser, or else any other browser, right? But then how to go to the URL? We'll have to write again, like if the browser is equal to Mozilla, then it will be first of all opening the Firefox browser, right? And then we say that, and then after that, first of all we'll open the browser, then we will navigate to the Gmail website, right? So I say driver.url is equal to, we have to go to the gmail.com website. Okay, and then else if the browser is equal to Chrome, then it will be opening the Chrome browser. Okay, and then similarly it will now be like we'll have to go to the gmail.com website. Okay, and same goes with the IE browser as well. If the browser is if the browser is IE, then it will first of all open the IE browser, and then we will navigate to the gmail.com website. Okay, so what we are, and same goes with entering the username as well. That is, if the browser is Mozilla, then we'll be like in the if statement we'll be writing the code to enter the username, and then click on the next button, and then so on your script. So what is actually happening is, that means writing the same set of line again and again in each and every if statement. In each if else statement, we are writing the same statement again and again for the 3 different browsers. The same set of lines repeated for every browser, right? You can simply see that. So the same goes with entering the username as well. We'll have to we'll see how we can work, how we'll enter the username. First of all, we'll have to find this username text field, then we'll have to enter the text in this username text field, right? So same statement we'll be writing in each and every if statement. So this problem is solved by the interfaces, right? How it is solved, let us see that. So coming back to our phone example. Okay, so we have this phone interface, call and the text function, and then say I create one class in my project, say it is the test phone class. Okay, I have a class, and I'll just create a main function. Okay, so in your test phone class, you have a main function inside it. So have you understood the problem? The problem says that I want to open a particular browser, okay, of my need, and only work on that browser only. And only work on that browser. Okay, so and then I want to make my code in a more efficient way. That is, I'll be opening up the browser of my need, and then we'll navigating to the Gmail website, entering the username, password, and then performing the regular script. Okay, so my problem is, and then I want to run my script in all the 3 browsers. So for that, we have declared the browser variable at the time. Okay, so now coming to our phone example, we have this test phone class with us. Okay, and then we have one interface, phone interface, and the 2 classes, iPhone class and the Nexus class, which is implementing the phone interface. Right, now in your main method over here in the test phone class, say suppose I create the object of my phone interface. So how will you create the object of the phone interface? That is, you have phone P is equal to new phone. I simply create the object of my phone interface. Okay, so you see that the error is coming below this phone interface, below the object of this phone interface. The error says cannot create an instance of the interface phone. You cannot create the object of an interface. The rule number 1 is we cannot create the object of an interface. Interface is nothing. Since we can say that, we can see that as well. Interface is just a skeleton. No implementation is there inside an interface. We have only declared the function. It's just the function name only that we have inside an interface. Nothing else inside an interface. So why to create the object of the phone interface, since we will not achieve anything creating the object of the phone interface, because everything is present in the implementing classes only, the class which is implementing that interface. The entire code is actually present inside the classes. Then why is there a need to create the object of the phone interface? Right, since phone interface, the interface is just a skeleton. We don't have anything inside an interface. So rather, what we will do is we will not create the object of an interface, since we will not achieve anything creating the object of an interface. So what we will do is we will create the object of the implementing classes. that is the Nexus class and the iPhone class. Okay, similarly we'll create the object of the iPhone class as well, the implementing classes, and then now if you try to access the two functions of the two classes, that is the call and the text function, we are easily able to access those functions. Okay, and the text function. Alright, so fine. Okay, I'll just compile the solution. The build is succeeded, fine, and I write console.read key, and if I execute my code, you see that it prints the output of both the functions in the classes, the two classes, Nexus and the iPhone class. Okay, the statements that we were trying to print. Okay, now suppose in my Nexus class, in addition to the two functions that we have in the Nexus class, I have one more unique feature in my Nexus class, that is the Google features. I have a unique functionality in my Nexus class. In my Nexus class, the Google features. Okay, and I simply print anything in my this function Google features. But this functionality is not present in the iPhone class. Okay, so we have not kept this Google features functionality in my phone interface. Yes.
Just you are getting some, yes, you are doing some something fast. So you told me that console.read key, and you told that Gmail function should be included by something. I stuck here when you execute the function. It can't start. It is stop.
Yes, yeah, like I told you, console.read key is used for reading the output, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, yes.
You didn't show me the output here. Now it's
Okay, I didn't get you. Sorry, like what you are asking. What is your issue?
No. You told me that earlier next class, right?
Yes.
Like, yes, here. Console.read key.
Yeah.
You didn't show me the output. I can write the console. Like some other feature it is coming up, Gmail or something like what they're including some Gmail feature. You told me, right?
Yes.
For that it is output.
Yeah.
Practicing it because it was not good, right?
Okay. Okay. Like in my main function.
See, I need to first initially I need to understand the interface, class, everything. I'm not familiar with those things. Just I need to understand the things. We are getting a little bit like.
Very fast I am going.
I need to understand.
Am I going fast?
Just give me some time. Yeah, little bit your fast. Because I'm not familiar with the class, right? I need to understand, right? What is the class, interface, how you are designing, how you are implementing. That what is new terminology for me. The class for me will take time, little bit time, at least.
Yes, I understand. Okay.
Because right, I am not familiar with what is the class, what is the interface, how you are working. These things I'm not very familiar. I don't know even the basics also. Those things also. Just I am understanding.
Okay.
Understood, right?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so like have you understood the concept of interface?
Yeah, concept of interface, okay. What you said is okay.
Yes.
But again, here, like, okay. The sharing these programs also, studying and educating these programs. Everybody can speak better and understand. Like this.
Okay. You mean to say the code you want to have?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just share with you the code. Yeah, I'll share with you the code of yesterday's class as well and today's class also.
Because then only I should understand, right?
Yes.
What code you written, how we can. See, I've tried to execute from my end.
Yeah.
But you can like my end and understand.
Okay.
No problem. Now can proceed for this thing. We have here interface and combination with the first class.
Yes.
We are ready.
Okay. Okay.
Understood my concern is.
Yes, yes, I understand. I understand. Okay.
Total little things, right? All the things of code you're writing up to me. I'm understanding that. But when I come to hands on, I need to type everything.
Yes.
Those things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I understand. Fine. Because when you do it on your end, then only you'll able to understand more clearly.
Yes.
Because, yeah.
When now I see, when I got clear understanding, then I'll start working on that. Right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The instruments you declared there and again implementing in the class. Just what I'm understanding, I'm very good. You interface, you declare all the method, all the functions,
Yes.
and implementing in the class.
Yes.
Without instance.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Just a little bit slow because I'm too.
Okay. Okay. No problem. So we'll just revise all again all the topics that we have discussed today. Fine.
Yes, that's what I want. That's what I want.
Okay.
That's what we these are topics for. See, you given the list of topics so that I can noodle and attention what I do study for today and next for. The same day I will execute all the programs what I teach in the class.
Okay. Fine. No problem. Okay, so today we discussed the two things, the concept of static and non-static, and we started with the interfaces, right? So have you understood static concept?
Yeah, I'm very clear about static concept.
Okay, good. Because static is very important. Yeah?
I'm very much clear on static.
Okay. So then we'll go to the interface topic. Fine. Now, what is an interface? Yeah. So like what we did was I just created an interface, phone interface, right? And then we all know that phone has two functionalities, the call and the text function. Every phone will have this functionality, call and the text function, right? And then there are some rules with an interface that comes, that is, there are some points that you have to follow with an interface. That is, the first point is, in an interface, we have only function declaration. No implementation is there. I mean to say that you can only declare the function. You cannot implement. Implementation means you cannot write the logic that you want to perform with that particular function in an interface. We have seen that. So if I try to implement anything inside my inside this function that I have declared in my interface, if I build the solution, then I get an error. Interface members cannot have a definition. So interfaces can have only declaration, the function declaration inside them, no implementation. So first point is this. Have you understood this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine, that's good. Okay, so first point is function declaration. Then the next point is we cannot declare the public access specifier inside an interface, since these members interfaces are public by default only. We need not to specify any access specifier with the interface inside an interface. Okay, so that is second point. And the third point is you cannot declare the fields inside an interface. We cannot declare in any fields inside an interface. Okay, if I try to compile my solution, then also I get an error. Interface cannot contain the fields inside them. Okay, so that is the next point. Fine. So this is about an interface. Now say suppose in our program a class comes in, an access class or the iPhone class. Now we know that iPhone is also having the functionality of calling and texting, right? So what it will do is it will simply implement that interface which contains the two functions that is required by the iPhone class as well. Okay, and then you just write, and then in the class that is implementing that interface, that class has to implement that functions. Okay, so we have implemented the call and the text function in the iPhone class. Whatever logic you have to write, you will be simply writing that logic in those functions. Fine. So this is your implementing classes. Okay. So then why are we using this interface? It is because the functions are same in the implementing classes. Like we discussed, I told you the example of the Samsung class. Say like right now we have only two classes, iPhone and the Nexus class. Say tomorrow if another class comes in, the Sony class comes in tomorrow, then Sony phone is also having the functionality of calling and texting. So if I don't declare the two functions in my phone interface, then I'll have to declare the two functions again in my Sony class, right? Fine. So the usage is, the first reason why we are using the interface is, it is because the functions are same in the implementing class. You need not to declare again and again the two functions. You need not to initialize all the functions in all the classes. Okay. So for that we have like declared the functions in an interface, and then we'll be simply we'll be simply defining these functions in the implementing class. Okay, and then secondly, we are taking the example of this Gmail website. That is, I have to go to this Gmail website, then we'll have to enter the username and password and log in into my account, and then I have to run this script in all the three browsers. So how can you do that? Okay, that is, we have seen that the same URL statement, the same driver.url, 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 same URL function I'm calling in every if else statement, and same will go with the finding the username and entering into the username text field, and similarly the password text field, and clicking on the login button will be writing the same code again in my every if else statement. So this is making your code redundant. We are writing the redundant code, right? Which is not at all good. Which is not at all a good practice to do in the programs, right? So for that, what we do is we'll be making use of the interfaces. We'll be simply resolving this with the help of an interface. So how we will be resolving this? That we were, like I was telling you, coming back to our phone example. Okay, that is, I have simply created one new class which contains the main method. Okay, and then we just saw that when we try to create the object of the interface, then we get an error, and the error says that you cannot create an object of the interface, since we can even see as well that in an interface, this phone interface is nothing. We are only declaring the functions. We are not doing anything inside this interface. So we will not achieve also by declaring the object of the phone interface. Right. So for that, I have rather what we will do is we will simply create the object of the implementing classes. The class which is implementing that phone interface, because in this class only we have our entire logic. This is only executing will execute your call and the text functions. How you want to execute this class will only tell you. Okay, fine. And then, so like where in your main function, because main function is only the function which is executable, right? Which executes first of all when you run your code. So in the main function only we write the console.readKey statement. So like in the iPhone class, in my call function I am printing anything, right? I am printing something. And then I think you might be confusing, like you meant to say that you will have to write the console.readKey over here. Okay, this is not accessible. You cannot do that, because in the console.readKey has to be written in the main function. Yes. Okay, because main function is only the executable function. So when I write the console.readKey in my main function, and then in my main function only I am calling the call and the text function. So it will first of all go to the call function. It will go to this call function. It will print this call someone. Okay, and then again it will come to this main function, and then after that I am saying end.text, that is call the text function. So it will go to the text function, print text someone, and then will come back to your main function, and then now it will call the i.call function. Okay, that is the call function of the iPhone class. So iPhone calling, it will print, then come back to the main function, it will now call the text function of the iPhone class, iPhone text, right? And then after that it will freeze your script till the time you close it at your end. Alright?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so this is how this is going to execute. Fine.